Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Trucking with Authority. I'm your host, Kenny Long, and for the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success in business, especially when it comes to the transportation and the trucking business. We can talk about anything here on the show tonight, from getting started as a driver, becoming an owner-operator, leasing to a carrier, changing to a new carrier, getting your own authority, and moving beyond that. Working with brokers, finding freight, dealing with contracts, FMCSA, record-keeping requirements, insurance requirements, you name it, we can talk about it here on this show. A lot of great stuff happening in this industry. This first part of the year, this is the first show in the new quarter. The first quarter of 2018 was one for the record books. Rates were like none I have ever seen before in the 20 years that I've been in the transportation business in general. The rates for the first quarter, which should be the slowest part of the year, the absolute slowest quarter of the year, actually exceeded rates from the previous 2 calendar years combined. I mean, that not at any time in the previous 2 calendar years did we even touch that. And even back in 2014, which was one of the higher grossing years that we had, I think the rates now, in the first quarter, the slowest part of the year, let me reiterate that the slowest, what is traditionally the lowest rates of the year, the first quarter of 2018 was at or above what were some of the record rates back in 2014. So phenomenal year, phenomenal things happening in the transportation business, and with great reward comes great risk. I know most of the time people say that the other way around, with great risk comes great reward, but we are being rewarded greatly right now, which means, yes, it works both ways. We need to understand that we are all taking great risk. I have talked about editing contracts in the past. I have talked about trying to limit your exposure and limit your liabilities in the past. Now is more important than ever to really pay attention to that. And really, the past couple of years that I have been saying this have been extremely important, because most of us are working under contracts now, currently, that we signed in the past couple of years when it was a slow season for freight. That means many of us are working under contracts that are risky as all get out. So we have to pay attention to what we have in front of us. We have to pay attention to all of the details. Brokers, customers, shippers, they are taking advantage of the leverage they have over carriers right now. And I have not seen brokers get this just outrageously strict with some of their contracts and using those terms against carriers. Never have I seen it before, like as hardcore as they're doing it right now. Huge risk that everybody's taking right now. That being said, yes, if a broker needs you bad enough, they are willing to negotiate that contract for that load. But what I am finding, which I in the past found a little unusual, was when they need you, they'll work with you, but they may not be willing at least, to work with you going forward under that same contract. So there have been several contracts that I have kicked back, or that Elizabeth is my contract guru. She goes through them with a fine-tooth comb. She goes through, kicks a lot of those back, a lot with brokers that have been around for decades, that have, we know they have the volume of freight, we know the risk, and we make some pretty simple changes, very, very simple changes, and they're kicking those contracts back because they're worried that for whatever reason, they won't get paid, and they're using their every bit of leverage they have to prevent from having to pay the carriers, or to prevent from having to pay the carriers on time at the very least. So be very, very careful with that. Pay attention to your contracts. Rates, currently, we're on the upward trend again, which is awesome. So I always use van as kind of the baseline because that is the most general commodity out there. The vans out that are running the majority of the freight. There are more vans than any other platform. And van rates were just stagnant, plateaued in the slowest part of the year when they should have been dropping. They stayed pretty steady at $2.14 per mile for about a month. They dipped only 1 penny last week, and now we see them again this week, which we're off by a week. So let me clarify that. The week ending this past Saturday, they were up 1 penny from what they were the previous weeks before. So they're at $2.15 per mile. Again, the week previous they did dip to $2.13, but they were at $2.14 for 4 consecutive weeks before that. Now, I would have expected them to dip down into the $1.70 range in those previous few weeks, and they stayed steady at $2.14 per mile on average nationwide. That is unheard of this time of year. Same type of trends with flatbed division. The flatbeds have been strong. I mean, usually flatbed tapers off around October, November as you go into the cold months. Obviously, the construction season is slow across the country. The flatbed freight doesn't move quite as strong through the winter months. This year was an anomaly. It was completely different. Flatbed stayed strong through the winter time, and when we should have been dropping, they were increasing rates. We're at over $2.52 per mile on the flatbeds right now. Again, record breaking for this time of year, and going up. They are increasing. Reefer rates have been steady at $2.40 per mile. At no time in 2015, 16, or 17 did we see reefer rates like that, especially consistent like that for so long. Had a little bit of a kickback. I had some people saying, well, they're stagnant. They should be doing something. Well, typically this time of year they're dropping. But we're at April 1st. As we move into April and toward the end of April, especially when we get into May, we are going to start seeing produce coming across the Mexican border. We're going to start seeing South Florida with a produce crop coming due. So we are going to start seeing some awesome things in the reefer segment too. All three, van, flatbed, reefer, all three are just out of this world right now. And what's about to happen, of course, April 1st, Sunday, was the first day of the full ELD enforcement of the full mandate. And here we are on Tuesday, the second business day. We're seeing some pretty tight capacity out there. So awesome. If you are a carrier, if you're a driver, we've got some great stuff happening. But that risk is out there. Now we're seeing risk from all areas. Of course, the regulations, the risk we're taking, the new ELDs, there is a lot of interpretation still to be had from the ELD mandate. A lot of law enforcement are still a little unsure about how it works. And I've seen some questionable citations being written. Of course, full enforcement means they will be putting you out of service now. So it's not a slap on the wrist. It's not a warning anymore. This is an out of service violation if you do not have those e-logs installed and working properly. There's a lot of people trying to use some loopholes in their favor, and I think it's probably going to backfire on a lot of carriers, a lot of drivers. So be very, very careful with that. We are streaming live tonight on all our platforms. We're on Blog Talk Radio. Again, 917-889-9924, the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. If you're watching live on YouTube or live on Facebook, both on the Trucking with Authority channels and groups, if you're watching the live video while you're driving, please put the screen down, turn that off, call the number 917-889-9924. Listen in live. This is like a live call-in radio show. Elizabeth is in the other room screening calls. Looks like we have some callers on the lines already with questions ready to go. We'll get to the callers here in just a few minutes. The risk out there is absolutely horrid. The things that I'm starting to see the brokers and customers and things do. And, my whole concept. Everything I do is talk about perception, because the perception that you have as a driver, the perception you have as an employee or as a contractor, as a carrier, the relationship you have with your customer, who your customers are, that perception, that perceived reality can change the way you make decisions on so many things. I think the reality and the perception of brokers and the way the interaction that we have with them right now is at a breaking point. We are really, really tense right now. And I'm seeing these brokers, and I know there's a lot of reasons for it. The brokers have bid some lanes not anticipating this. I mean, we are at record rates right now. What record means is they've never been seen before. So if rates have never like this been seen before, then it was impossible for anybody to predict that it would be like it is, which means the information and the things that all the tools that brokers and shippers and things used to bid these lanes was inaccurate, because there was nothing like this in the past. The trends have never done this. So we know for a fact that it was very unexpected to have rates this high, this fast, and this soon. From where we were just a year ago, I mean, we are in some cases 50% higher on some lanes. And it was impossible for some brokers to bid that. Now, the other problem is carriers and drivers don't necessarily understand how that process works. So they are shaking their fist about how the brokers are taking advantage of them and they're keeping too much, or they're, we're going to rake them over the coals, or they're trying to screw us somehow. And they don't know the process. So yeah, maybe it takes a certain rate per mile to get a load moved, but there may not literally be that much in it. The shippers don't have it. So let me tell you a little story. We have a customer, and we are bidding a lane for them, and we know what these rates are going to take. We know what it will take. We do very unique shipments. We know without a doubt that some of these shipments will be expensive. The particular shipment, the commodity that we're moving, you can't justify the rates. The money isn't there. It's not that the shipper isn't willing to pay, it's that the shipper will have a hard time selling the product to justify the shipping cost. And good or bad, that could put this particular shipper out of business, because this is their only real product. Makes it very difficult. So what do? They do everything in their power to stay in business. And they're looking at trying to get their own trucks, hire their own drivers, because shippers can move products cheaper by themselves than for-hire trucking carriers can. The capacity does drive rates up, but supply and demand works that way. If it's cost effective for a shipper to hire a broker, to hire a carrier to get the loads moved so that they can focus on what they do best, which is making products or selling their product out there, then that's what they'll do. But when that line is crossed, when the line in the sand is drawn and that price exceeds the margin where it makes sense, they have to look at that and say, look, I'm going to have to go out there and buy my own trucks, or I'll have to hire a carrier directly, or I'll have to hire drivers, whatever it takes, they'll have to do that to stay in business. And that's what some of these shippers are starting to do. They're just not shipping product. It doesn't make sense. So we have a big customer. We had to put out some big numbers because we know that's what it'll take to get some of these shipments moved, unfortunately. And I had to have a talk with him, and I could hear it in his voice that he was very upset, that he didn't understand why the price would be so much. He even was asking questions. Well, what fuel prices are only at such and such a gallon? I mean, we know the fuel cost is this, and we know the cost of the drivers is that. We know what a truck would cost. He knows he can go buy his own truck, right? He knows what a truck would cost. So he can't wrap his mind around why rates are so high. Now, this is a shipper, and I was trying to explain the supply and demand is driving capacity and driving the rates the way they are right now. It's very hard for some shippers to understand that because they have a budget for their products. And I know that some shippers have priced their products and they've sold their products on contracts. Shippers have sold their products on contracts that might go out several years or months anyway. And the rates are where they're at. I know that there are shippers that price their products and sign contracts for deals for retailers that want that product on their shelf for a certain price. And they signed that last year using data over the past decades. And that data over the past decade said rates would be probably in this certain range. And they signed contract rates with carriers that don't have the capacity either. So carriers that have thousands of trucks, the mega carriers, signed these contracts, and they're moving these at a certain rate. But they would rather pull their trucks off and go pull the $4 or $5 a mile stuff rather than the $1.70 a mile contract they have. Of course they would. But they have to make the shipper happy. So these rates get spread out. Now, take the carriers out here that are trying to make the money on the spot market, and they don't understand why the broker can't make it happen. There are brokers still out there posting what some might call cheap rates, cheap freight. But that literally may be all they have in it in some cases because of the way that the shippers are willing to pay. Now, it's important to understand something. While brokers are trying to protect their bottom line, and they're trying to make as much profit as they can, the shippers, and I know this firsthand. I used to be just a carrier only. And I used to really think that the brokers are really trying to put it to us at all times, right? Now, I'm also a broker. And I'm out there making these sales calls, and I'm working with these shippers. Shippers, as a broker dealing with a shipper, the shippers put 1,000 times more pressure on a broker to keep the prices down than the brokers ever put on a carrier. Believe me, shippers are the ones that are really, really putting the pressure on because they have to. They, again, have to get their product on the shelves and in the hands of the retailers or their services delivered. They have to be there at a certain price because they have customers to make happy. Now, there are stories, and we've talked about this on the show before. There are products out there, commodities. You have mulch and bricks and things like that. They could sit there forever because it's not a valuable product. There's not a high demand for the product. I think that's a good way to explain this. There's not a high demand for bricks when every store in the country has a stockpile of bricks. When they're out there at the warehouse and the shipper is trying to move them, they can sit on it for as long as it takes until the rates come down and they can move it. They know that they won't be able to move it during produce season. They know that shingles won't be able to move, in the middle of the wintertime when nobody's roofing houses. They understand that, so they can sit on it until the rates come into place, until it makes sense to ship it. That same philosophy goes up the chain for every product, right up to, gold bars, okay? Whatever product is, that commodity is on the chain, there is a value to that product and a shipping cost associated with what is the value. Of course, the shipping cost has to be passed along. There are some products that there is a price point. You would not buy some products at a certain price. And if shipping, and there are a lot of things, if you understand, there are a lot of things on the grocery store shelves right now, the shipping cost is more expensive than the manufacturing. If that shipping cost goes up exponentially, you probably won't buy it. Think about the just simple things in the grocery store. Ramen noodles. I remember ramen noodles used to be 25 cents. If ramen noodles were 50 cents, I probably wouldn't buy them because, let's be honest, ramen noodles aren't worth 50 cents. Okay? So there are products out there that just are not worth that price. Everything has a price tag. What are you willing to pay for it? And that is how supply and demand works. But we have to understand that trickles down. So because of that, capacity is tight, rates are high, brokers and shippers both are trying to do everything they can to save money. There are some brokers that sign these contracts and they are coming out of pocket. They might be the mega carriers that have thousands of trucks, and they might be able to move 90% of the loads on their own trucks and make a profit, but not the profits they could make on the open spot market. So they try to broker out the other 10%, and they may literally have to come out of pocket. They may have to lose money because they have a signed contract to make that happen. Now, if you're a one-truck carrier, you don't care. You just want as much as you can get. But understand that if they're coming out of pocket for that, there's a price tag for your service as well. What are they willing to pay for the service that they get? This goes back to the risk. They are going to put a lot of stipulations on what they're paying for. Because a year ago, whatever it was, $1.50 to $2 a mile, whatever the average rates were, they'd be willing to pay that. They were making money on you still, and they might be able to give and take on some of the terms in their contracts. But now if they're going to pay you $3 or $4 per mile on a general dry van load, which those loads are out there right now, they are going to be very strict. They are going to put specific appointment times. They're going to put specific details about that load. And if you do not adhere to those specific details, they will penalize you for it financially. Right of set off is one that absolutely, if there's the smallest little claim right now, even something notated on a bill of lading, be ready for that broker to hold every penny that they owe you, not just for that load, but for every load. And I will tell you that almost every broker contract out there has that in it, and very few brokers are willing to waive it because that is one way they can hold your money indefinitely. Let us take some phone calls. We've got Alicia in Pennsylvania. Let's see. Alicia, are you there? Let's see if we can get it. There we go. Alicia, can you hear me?
Okay, I think you just unmuted me.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay. What's on your mind, Alicia?
Okay, so I was just calling to get more information about bringing over owner-operators
Okay.
to my authority.
Okay.
And I know there's like a checklist for like getting your authority in the
Right.
file section on the page. And I was wondering if there was a checklist created for how to bring owner-operators over.
There is not currently, but there will be because you just placed an order. So I will work on that for you. All right. So
Perfect.
first of all, bringing over owner-operators. We talked a little bit about this last week. Why do you want to bring over owner-operators? Let's get to that first.
Because I have like 3 or 4 potential people that want to come over to my authority, and
Okay.
they have their own trucks.
Okay.
I think it will be less of a headache. In my opinion, I don't know. I'm
Less of a
I'm
headache
not a
than
gal
what?
when it comes to this industry. Than having your own truck and
Okay.
hiring drivers.
Okay. Let's go back to that. If you had your own truck and you did hire a driver, what would you do with that truck?
Like drive-in, you mean? As far
Whatever
as
you're
trailer?
you're bringing on, what would you do with a truck? If you had the trucks, what would you do with them?
As far as just moving freight to, I would most likely do drive-in just because that's what I'm used to now. Like I have a partnership right now, and he's the driver.
Okay.
And we do drive-in now.
Okay, here's what I'm getting
Our
at.
authority just
And
want to
and I
act
can
as
he-
like, okay.
I can hear a little bit from the hesitation in your voice that maybe you haven't thought of it from this perspective again. So typically when a carrier wants to bring on an owner-operator or add capacity, they have a reason. Okay, so do you have a customer that you want to try to keep happy? Do you have a need for the extra capacity? Or are you adding the capacity to allow the owner-operator to do their own thing? And you're just going to do the back office. Like what are you offering the owner operator,
Yeah.
and what is the owner operator bringing to the table for you?
Okay, so it'd be the latter. I don't have any customers in place. I'm looking just to kind of like grow. I'm familiar with how to set up one owner operator because that's what we did to start the business.
Right.
Other than that, it would be to allow owner operators to come under my authority. I haven't figured out like percentages as far as the split in the financial aspect of it. Again, I haven't done it before. This is all new to me. Even the industry is completely new to me.
Gotcha.
It's like not in my history at all. In October is when I started learning how to do stuff. Did the paperwork. Our authority went active in December. We turned wheels in January, and we've been running and turning wheels ever since. Now I have a few friends that have their own trucks that I would like to bring over.
Okay.
Just to kind of like grow. I don't have specific customers. I haven't gotten to the point of learning how to get to like dedicated runs and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. My next question is, what are you offering the owner operator?
The whole back office support
Okay.
is what I would do, and then I would see if they wanted to self-dispatch versus hiring a dispatch
Gotcha.
service.
Okay. Now, all that is obviously going to play into your business model and what you, your business plan and what you will charge them percentage-wise. You mentioned you haven't got that part of it figured out yet. So I started with that because I think it's important to understand the value that they bring to you, the risk that they bring to you, and what you have to offer back to them. So it's important to understand what's going on here. Now, this whole show is about risk. So let me talk about the risk first of all. You started in October, and you got your own authority in October?
Well, I filled out the paperwork. It went active December 23rd.
Active December. Okay, so you've been active only a few months. And now, what was your experience in the trucking industry before that?
Nothing.
Okay.
Completely nothing. That's what I was saying.
Okay. And
I'm
first,
a novice girl when it comes to this.
and first
Everything
of all,
is new.
and I want to applaud you for that, because I think that alone is pretty awesome. I mean, you jumped right in with both feet, got your own authority. Sounds like you're profitable. Do you know, I mean, are you profitable, or you got a good handle on your numbers?
Yes. Well, right now I use everything in Excel sheets.
Okay.
I have everything in that way. My partner is a friend, and he was like asking me to do this with him for like 2 years, and I never had an interest in it. And then I was finding myself in a career change, so I was like, what the heck, why not?
Gotcha.
I was like, what do I need to do? And he was like, I don't know, figure it out. So
Gotcha.
that's what I'm doing, figuring it out.
Well, and that's awesome. I think that's phenomenal. Now, your friend, your partner, I'm assuming has experience in the industry, has a truck, had this prior to, and asked you to kind of run the back office, get the company set up and run it for them, right?
He was driving trucks a little less than 2 years.
Okay.
And as a company driver. So when we started, we bought the truck under the company's name, and then that's what he's been driving.
Gotcha. Okay. First of all, congratulations, because to get to the point that you're at right now, most people are shaking in their boots. And I guarantee you that there are probably people either listening now, or if you posted this story on one of the Facebook groups, they would tell you how foolish this is and that it can't be done, right? But it can be done. You're doing it. You made it happen.
Yeah, I had that.
Yes.
I had that.
Yes.
happen.
Okay.
They're
So
like,
that's,
oh, no, you need this amount of money. You need this amount of money.
you
blah,
need
blah,
this
blah,
amount of
blah,
money.
do
You
it.
can't do this
And
unless
someone
you've
was-
been in the business for
Yeah.
15 years. You can't, you need to have, you have to know the trucks. You have to know everything about it. You have to know how to work with brokers. You have to know everything. And that's a bunch of hogwash. And I
Yeah.
think what you're doing is awesome, because people that come up through other companies and learn through other people's, habits, pick up those habits along the way. And I have, about a year ago, worked with someone else that happened to live nearby me here in Florida, and stopped in the office, and it was the same situation. Had no idea, kind of knew a little bit about trucking, saw some stuff, had never driven a truck, went out, bought a truck, took the driver's test in the truck that he bought, and got his own authority, never worked for anybody, and just went to work and made it happen. Everybody told him it couldn't be done, just like I know people told you it couldn't be done. That being said...
Yeah, even if, like, I asked...
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I asked even people that were close to me. I've asked strangers, and a lot of responses were, well, if you have to ask these sort of questions, that tells me that you don't have knowledge into it. You shouldn't do it. I'm
Right.
like, that's not my question I asked you, but thanks for your response. And, you just keep searching until you find people like, Shane's always been a big help. I've been on your page for a while, and just learning and find the people that actually want to help.
Absolutely. So that's awesome, first of all. That being said, I want to go back to what I was saying before. It's extremely risky. You've only been in business a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had your initial safety audit yet?
No.
You haven't. Okay. So I was working with, throw it out there, Jason Pote, the trucker's coach. He has been in the same situation. I've been helping him a little bit as well. He's fairly new. He's had his authority 7 or 8 months now, and he's adding his first owner operators now as well. Hasn't had his initial safety audit yet either. I had some of these same conversations with him. What are you offering? Understand the risks that are involved, and understand that you could bring on the wrong owner operator, and everything that you're trying to build right now could be taken from you due to no fault of your own. be very, very careful. I'm running Patriot Star. I'm at 15 trucks right now. And, I still look at every little thing that these drivers do. All the, nobody's perfect. They make mistakes. There are claims. There are accidents. There are things. And it's stressful sometimes because everything that I'm working on, it could be taken from me in an instant, and the same with what you have. You have no control over that. You and your partner are, financially invested in this, and it could, they will come in and they have to be first. They are your priority. So understand that essentially they are, now, they are offering you a service. They have a truck, and they are going to deliver freight for you. How will you find them freight?
Well, currently what I do is I look at load boards for
Okay.
my driver. It's a time-consuming.
It's
Like I enjoy it, but I don't want to be the one stuck doing it.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I had looked at different dispatch services,
Okay.
and trying to find the right one to cater to my partner because he wants to stay more local, versus the other people that I'm bringing on. They would be more over the road. So I don't think it would be as hard to find somebody that could cater to their needs.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So I got way off on a tangent. We're talking more specifically about you, but you asked a specific question. How do you bring on owner operators? I want you to understand before you bring on owner operators that it's important, and this is a first step, is to have a business plan in place. And all of the questions I'm asking you need to be addressed in that business plan. Number one, what do you need to add owner operators for? Why? What is your goal there? Okay. That's going to define your business. Are you a carrier that essentially you have customers to make happy? Or are you making money from the owner operators? And if that's the case, what are you doing in return? What are you providing the owner operator? So you are the carrier. You are hiring an owner operator. You are going to pay the owner operator. You are their customer. You're buying services from them. Why would they come to you? Why would they sell their services to you when they could sell it to anybody? So what are you offering that,
Right.
and it's not just going to be the payment, it's going to be all of the other services you offer as well. So first of all, before you do anything, create a very specific business plan and address all this. Why are you bringing them on? Then, of course, you're going to have to get into the percentages and what you plan to offer. Now, in your level in this business, I would say that you are offering all of the back office type support. So you need to be an expert at that. All right. So there are a lot of features that you can offer them, but you have to be very, very good at what you do. So this is a very good question. Where do you start? The first thing is when you bring on an owner operator, you're adding a truck to your fleet. Okay. Same process as when you brought on your first truck, even though you may have owned or what have you with the first truck. You have to do all of the same paperwork. So the truck itself is pretty easy. You got to have your cab cards. You have to have it licensed in all the states, New Mexico, New York, Kentucky. I have to have it on the registry. You have to have your KYU number. With one or two trucks, not KYU, excuse me, the UCR out of Indiana, Unified Carrier Registration out of Indiana. Now, with one or two trucks, it's the same price. Once, if you add a third truck, fourth truck, you actually have to increase that, and it gets more and more expensive. So you have to continually update that as well.
I've seen that.
Okay? So remember that those things happen. Bringing on the truck is the easy part. The driver part is a whole other situation. The driver, you have to do complete background checks. You're going to need to pull a PSP report. You're going to need to do the motor vehicle records, background checks for all of their employers for the past 3 years. Okay? You need to make sure you do annual MVR reports. Make sure you do annual check, annual review of everything they have. Let's see. You're going to have to make sure you have a very strong contract with this owner-operator. The contract is going to have to address all of the things that are in the truth in leasing laws. If you Google that, FMCSA written lease requirements, very specific things that have to be listed in there. You need to figure out how you're going to provide for those. One of those is the owner-operator has to be paid within 15 days. Do you have the financial backing or the liquid assets to be able to fund a truck, not your own truck, but another truck for at least 15 days before you can get paid and pay them. Okay, and remember that your customers may be 30, 45, 90 days out paying you. I don't know, are you factoring?
Not right now.
Okay, keep it that way.
I was planning on choosing a factoring company if I brought in multiple drivers.
Okay.
I didn't want to pay for anything. Like, I didn't want to pay people to do my authority, fill out these forms and all that sort of thing, because I wanted to learn how to do it on my own. And if I did it on my own, then I would have more knowledge versus,
awesome.
Okay, you do it for me.
Yes, awesome.
And then invoicing is one of the things that I wanted to learn how to do myself. So we didn't have to factor, so we chose not to factor.
Awesome. And that's good. Now, I would say do not factor, especially as high as rates are right now. You know, you should be able to, especially if you're running your own truck, run your own truck at a minimum and help use your truck to help finance the second truck. Just run at cost with your first truck until you build up the reserves or until you have the cash flow to make this all work. Okay, so do not factor. If you need to, use some quick pays. Quick pays are the best way to try to get your money, and then there's no recourse on that because you already have the cash directly from your customer. So that's a good way to do it. I do factor currently. I did not start factoring until I had 4 trucks, and that was only because paperwork on billing and invoicing and check and accounts receivables and follow-up and everything that it required just got to be too much for me to handle, even with Elizabeth helping me, too much to handle on my own. So we outsourced that. Okay, and that was the only reason. And I told my factor that I don't care. It's going to have to be the absolute best rate in the world because I don't want a factor. I just need to hire you to do all this other stuff. I don't need you for the cash flow. So make sure that you get yourself in a position.
And that's exactly how my...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So hold off factoring as long as possible. Now, but make sure that you're able to pay your owner-operator timely because that will be the first thing that will land you in hot water, not being able to pay. Second, make sure you have... your accounting systems in place. You said you're using spreadsheets right now. Spreadsheets are awesome, but the more trucks that you get, the more complicated those spreadsheets will be. I've been looking at a program called TruckLogix. TruckLogix will work. It will do your invoicing. It will do pretty much all of your bookkeeping. Super inexpensive, less than $20 a month if you have 2 trucks. Does everything. Your accounts receivable, everything you need it to do. Your drivers even have an app to where they can scan paperwork to you, which is another thing that you'll need to make sure that your drivers can get everything they need to you. So TruckLogix, check that out.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. Okay. Yeah, because before I would bring on trucks, I would want to get things in place as far as the trucking software, the accounting, the payroll, and all of that in order. Because I wouldn't want to do this with Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that.
Right.
Because right now, of course, I only have 1 truck, so I'm saving everything and filing everything just with that 1 truck, and then I'm thinking, wait, these invoices are going to have to be, like saved differently, and these BOLs, like I have them saved by the name, the customer, and then like the date, and I'm like, wait, that's not going to work if I have multiple drivers. Like,
it gets to be complicated.
Things that are coming in, so I want to find a good tracking system so I can
check out
everything in place.
And I don't get any kickbacks from this or anything like that, but I find this program to be awesome. And again, it's called TruckLogix. If you are a member of OIDA, they have their own version of that. They've got their negotiated rate, and it's called Trucker Sphere. But either way, that is awesome. It's going to do all of your invoicing. It'll do all of your bookkeeping. It does pair with QuickBooks if you need it, but actually there is enough of the bookkeeping capabilities within TruckLogix that you don't even need QuickBooks in most cases. Again, it's got a driver app. You can do your settlements. I believe last time I talked to them, they're working on pairing up with fuel cards. I don't know if that feature's there yet, but it's pretty easy to print out your fuel card information and port that over and just add that to their settlements. Settlements get pushed right to the driver app and everything. It's an awesome app. I really like it. I'm going to try to work something out with them to where I can offer it to members of the group. But for now, again, OIDA's got it, Trucker Sphere. And I think for a 1 or 2 an owner-operator lease to a carrier, $7.95 a month. You can't beat it. And once you get your own authority and you need the invoicing features and things like that, I want to say it's less than $20 a month for pretty much as many trucks as you need. But once you get up over a certain number of trucks and you need more features, tops out around a little over $100 a month. Pretty much will run an unlimited size fleet, which is awesome. So check that out.
Okay.
That'll do your bookkeeping. So my next question is, you got 1 truck now. What is your cost per mile?
I don't have all that stuff memorized.
Okay.
Like I said, it's all in Excel sheets, and I could figure it out.
Do
But
you have it? Do you
like
have
the
that already
different ones that
broken
I
down?
got,
Do you have that already broken down in your sheets? I mean, could you go right now, open up that Excel spreadsheet and look at one line without doing any calculations? Just look at that one line and say, this is my cost per mile?
no, but I have the blank sheets of like 5 or 6 different examples, and then I have everything, receipts, this, that, and the third, like in the Excel sheets, but I just never put it together.
Got it. Okay.
I know that's
you
awful.
absolutely need to get your own house in order before you bring over guests. Okay, so make sure you get all of that in place. Your accounting system, again, TruckLogix will help you get all that in place. You can pretty much just enter everything right off your spreadsheets right over there. We're in the first quarter. Would recommend if you start a system like that, go back, and you only started in December, so you could go all the way back to the beginning of time for your business, but at least go back to January 1st so you've got everything for the year. If that's too cumbersome.
So we didn't turn wheels until January 16th.
Perfect.
So I
Perfect.
would go back the whole way.
So just go back to January 16th and knock it out. You'll have everything for the year. You're going to have your profit and loss sheets. You're going to have everything you need to file your quarterly taxes and all that kind of stuff. Have all of that in place. That way, and then be familiar with it. That way, when you bring on your first owner operator, you have the systems in place and you can just add them on. That was one of the mistakes that I made, was having inferior systems in place, because honestly, when I brought on my first owner operator, I was still using spreadsheets. I didn't have anybody to ask, what do I do next? So I figured this out on my own. So again, TruckLogix is great, but there's a lot of other systems out there. There are a lot of systems out there that are specifically only for owner operators leased to a carrier, and you have to make sure you avoid those, because they will not give you the information and the features you really need to be successful, and you're going to end up regretting it and having to switch to something else later. Again, I like TruckLogix, especially in the beginning stages. It's affordable, and it'll grow with you as you add trucks. That's what I've enjoyed about it, about learning about that system. If I would have started on that system in the beginning, I would have stayed with it through probably until, I outgrew it, which would be probably 50 or 100 trucks. Because I didn't start on that system and I have to send all my information through something else, then it's a struggle, and I've been talking about it on this show for months about how I've been looking for the perfect TMS. That's how I stumbled across that one. But I'm spending I just spent about $20,000 on a system to try to bring in-house to try to get all this stuff squared away. And so you don't want to get there. Start with a system that can grow with you. So, all right, so going back to the beginning here, how do you bring on an owner-operator? Bring all the paperwork in for the truck. Make sure you have all the paperwork in order, the cab card, the inspection, the insurance, the IFTA sticker. If they're running your information, if they're running your license plates and your IFTA, make sure that you have all the record-keeping requirements in place for that. You are also going to be responsible for the safety of that truck. Treat it as if it's your own truck, which means you have to do the logs. So whatever e-log system, make sure you have that available. You can usually do your IFTA and IRP right off of that system. Let's see. Trailer, same thing. Make sure you have the cab card for the trailer. Make sure you have your annual inspection for the trailer. You need to keep all of these updated and on file. I've got some other systems that you can use for that. There are some software programs online. One is Driver Files Online, and the other, it's a sister company to them, is Vehicle Files Online. This is a good way to do it. They need to fill out a complete application when they come on, okay? This has a built-in application. They could fill it out online. Again, it's going to have all the permissions that they need to do their background checks and their history checks. Have them fill that out. It's going to have all the categories they need to do their driver file, which needs to be complete, especially if you haven't had your initial safety audit yet. They are going to come through and tear you apart, especially the more trucks you have. If you have up to 5 trucks, they will inspect all 5 trucks. All 5, every one of them. If you have between 1 and 20 trucks, they will inspect 5 trucks, okay? So that first 5 trucks, plan on inspecting everything. Have all of your ducks in a row for everything. So a good way to do that, again, Driver Files Online and Vehicle Files Online. This system has kind of built-in features to where you can pull the MVR, pull the PSP right through the system. It'll keep all of your documents organized. But if you don't use that system, it will still give you the outline of what you need. Or you can go ahead and buy the J.J. Keller folder that has the outline of everything you need in the nice manila folder, and you can keep hard copies. Nothing says it has to be digital online, but it's nice, and it definitely makes the inspectors happy. So make sure you have your driver file complete and in place. And since you're just starting, you haven't been through your initial audit yet, they haven't come in to tell you whether or not you're doing it correctly yet now. So that's why I'm saying use one of these other systems to try to make sure you have everything in place. The last thing you want to do is do something wrong. The most important thing when you bring on a second driver is make sure they go get their pre-employment drug screen. Add them to your drug consortium, okay? And make sure you have the results back. Don't just send them for the test, but have the results in hand before they go take that test, or before they go take that first load, okay? Let's see. So you have to have a complete driver file. Make sure you add them to your insurance. Add their truck to your insurance. Make sure that they have their own. You could provide this for them, or they can get their own. I'd recommend they get their own policy, but their own physical damage and liability policy, bobtail insurance. Okay, make sure they have that. Make sure they have occupational accident insurance in place, because if they get hurt and they're under your name, it's on you. If they don't do that, have them sign a waiver.
Right.
Some of these things, honestly, are things that I'm still, refining in my own business. Let me see. I think I've pretty much nailed it. I think that's about all. I'm sure there's some things I've missed, but I will put together a checklist for how to grow your fleet here, and I'll add that to one of the groups in the next week or so.
Okay.
All right. Do you have any other questions? I can hear you flipping pages like you're taking notes. So if you have anything else.
I am. I'm writing down stuff. I'm a note taker.
Yeah, and I kind of was all over the board with that, so I'm sorry if I didn't go in chronological order on everything. But if you have other questions, now's the time.
No, so I want to offer my drivers as much support as I can, because I'm really into customer service and that sort of thing. So when it comes to the percentages and stuff like that, well, like I had kind of given away, I'm not sure of all the expenses when it comes to things. And when I'm bringing on owner-operators, the expenses that's going to come out of that, just like even small things about pulling a MVR, that's cost. And different little things are going to be cost to me. So when it comes to the percentages and that sort of thing, I know I'm newer, but the costs are still the cost. So just because I'm a new carrier doesn't mean that I can't, charge the same as other carriers that are out there that have their authority longer and that sort of thing. So I'm kind of thinking at what point would you justify how some people do it? And I've read a lot in the groups about some people only doing 10%, some do 20%, but they offer this, that, and the third. And
okay, well, I
think you had said that I can't remember what your percentage was, but I think that you had you pay a partial of the insurance and that sort of thing.
I pay all of the insurance. So let me cover that here really quick.
You pay all of it. Okay.
Yep. So the first thing is, and that brings up another point. Have you checked with your insurance company on what this would cost you?
I've had my insurance cost me for the whole year was $8,706.
Okay. Have you asked them about adding a second truck?
I have, and they said that it wouldn't be an issue, but they needed the details of the information.
Right.
And I am working on getting that information.
Right. Okay, so here's something to be careful of.
I don't know what they're going to quote.
Right. Here's something to be careful of. You're only in 4 months, okay? And if you add a second truck, they'll work with you. There are some insurance companies that will not work with you. Now, at one truck, if you add a second truck, you just doubled the size of your fleet, okay? So insurance companies look at that, and they say that's a big red flag, that's high risk. You just doubled the size of your fleet. If you have 15 trucks and you add one truck, it's not a big deal. You haven't, increased their risk exponentially. But one truck, you just doubled their risk, okay? So now, something that's just important to understand. So if you go try to add 3, 4, 5 trucks immediately, when it comes time for insurance renewal, your insurance company may drop you just for that. So have a real heart-to-heart talk with your insurance agent about this, all right? That's important, because
I've heard.
some insurance companies may frown on this altogether. They might tell you to hold off on adding a second truck at least after your first year. I can tell you I did not add my first truck for insurance purposes. I did not add a second owner-operator truck until after my second year in business. Okay, so it was worth it to hang on and wait. So be very, very careful about that alone. All right. I'm actually going to go ahead and bring on.
I had my own little experiences when it came to the whole insurance thing, because when I first got a quote, it was $15,995 for the year.
Yeah.
And then I read the fine print of the paperwork, which stated it wasn't off of your credit, like your credit score, it was off of your credit history.
Right.
So I ended up switching the financial responsibility partner, and then they like literally cut it in half.
Wow. Okay. That's
so
huge.
I have
And
many calls. Yeah, it was awesome.
yeah,
It was a
and
great
the thing
learning
is, there's
experience.
so many little things like that with insurance that can really change things, and adding trucks can be more difficult. You know, they'll start looking at your owner-operator's driving record and see what risk he offers. You know, so if you bring somebody on, that's something to be very careful about. Your insurance company may accept them, but if they consider them to be high risk, if they have tickets or accidents that, although they might fall under the, you know, they're allowable, you may not want to. So it's something else to look at. Be very careful on
Right.
who you hire. Be selective. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring on Kim here. I'm going to leave you on the air, Alicia, because I think Kim may have something to add to this. Kim,
Okay.
welcome to the show.
Hi, Kenny. How are you tonight?
Great. Alicia's on with us as well. I see you have some either comments or
Hello,
questions
Kim.
on this.
Hi. Well, yeah, it's a big undertaking. I can say that in April, which is this month, here in a couple of weeks, we'll have had our authority for 2 years. And we had a friend that when we first got our authority, they kept aggravating to lease them on. And my comment to them was, because I, like Alicia, knew enough to know nothing, and it was a very big learning experience for me. And my comment to them was, I'm learning this myself, and until I get it figured out for just our one truck, I would hate to bring someone else on and be the cause of their failure, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Mhm.
So
And that's why I've waited.
Yes,
I know it's not long, but I know I've waited.
Right. My personal advice to you is, like Kenny said, give yourself a year with the one truck, because when you really dole into the paperwork, it's a full-time job even for one truck.
Mhm.
And then it's double the work when you have two trucks, especially if you're the one finding the loads and negotiating the loads and doing the billing and the accounts receivable and the compliance and all of that stuff. It is overwhelming when it's just overwhelming. I was ready to give up. I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, because now we added our second truck, and we waited until almost 2 years to add our second truck, and we bought the truck. So we're hiring a company driver. And that's why I called in. My question to Kenny is, when I send out these employment verification forms to previous employers of this driver, do I have to wait until I get the back in my possession before I can put him on the road?
No. No, you don't have to. In
Okay.
fact, you need to do your best efforts to try to get this done. And there will be some employers that just never respond. And the way it's worded is you have to put a good faith effort in doing the background checks. So if you send that to them, and you do
Right.
have to, there is a form that you need to send to them. You send it to the employer, and they may not send it back at all. A good faith effort would be you send it to them a couple of times. Some people say 3 times. Nothing specifically says 3 times, but a good faith effort on your part. And if you send it to them, they don't respond within the first couple of days. You send it to them again. At this point, the driver's ready to go. Go ahead. You could hire them on. But if something comes back and all of a sudden you find out that, well, this company fired them because they got caught hauling a load of drugs across the Mexican border, you might want to go back and have a talk with them.
Right.
right? But you have to use a little bit of
Right.
integrity and hope that the people you're hiring, have integrity as well. And if they had something to disclose, they should have disclosed it on their application. And it would be something just outrageous that
Correct.
comes back on their background check that you would probably let them go for. So really what you're checking on is to find out if they had preventable accidents, or any accidents rather, and to see if there was any violations of the drug and alcohol policies. That's really the only thing that you'll
Okay.
find on a history check. And, again,
Okay.
ideally, they would never come to you if there was an issue anyway. So, no, you don't necessarily have to have it in hand. It's a good idea, but there may be some that take weeks or months to get anything back to you, and some never at all. So you can't really rely on somebody else's due diligence to make your business happen.
Right. Because our other driver quit after a week and a half, and this truck's been sitting for a month, and I got to get it back on the road. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to have to wait for, a month to get all these things back before? Because I want him on the road like Monday.
Right. Let's back up a minute. A week and a half. Because I remember talking to you when you were just about to bring him on. He made it a whole week and a half in a row. That's impressive, Kim.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, there was a personal situation that happened. His wife decided to leave him, which,
Okay.
I understand.
So, Alicia, are you
He
listening?
just thought that it was best that he quit.
Yes.
So these are the things that you're facing. So it can happen. And I've over the few years that I've been bringing on owner operators, the same thing. I've had some unique situations come up. Driver will start and a week later say, "Oh, my truck's broken down. I'm going to quit again." That kind of thing. And it happens. And everything else will be in place, or you'll have a driver come on that is not financially ready. And they'll be under a load and blow out a tire and take it to the tire shop, and you're going to have to spend $1,200 on a tire out of your pocket because they don't have the money. But if you don't, you get penalized, not them, for that load being late or not delivered at all, right? So these are the risks that you take. There is a lot of risk in bringing on other people to represent your business.
Right,
I'll
right.
give
And I
you a
keep
little-
that in mind.
I'll give you a little piece of advice that David Owen, which is one of the founders of NASTIC, when I went to the NEST class a couple of years ago, we were talking about drivers, and he said when you hire drivers or you lease on owner operators, and this has always stuck with me, and I obviously can't seem to learn from it, but that he said always make sure that the drivers that you hire or that you lease on know how to manage their money. That goes right to what Kenny was saying. If they don't know how to manage their money, then if something happens, then they're not in a financial position to fix it, and then they come to you and want you to front the money. And when you're getting started, that's very hard if you don't have a big bank account, and most of us don't when we start.
Right. Yeah, since I am new and I know my insurance will only allow me to hire a few, I'm definitely looking and being picky and choosy on who I want to bring over, because I don't have many that I can just throw in there. Like, I don't want just random drivers. Like, I want diamonds.
And diamonds are hard to find.
Advice I would give you is if they are friends of yours, as that was the situation we were in, the one that was a week and a half last year, he owned this truck that we bought, and he leased on with us, and that lasted 2 months. But anyway, if they are friends of yours, I would highly recommend that you make it very clear from the very beginning that business is business, has nothing to do with your personal relationship, and that's very hard to differentiate between business and personal.
Yes, I've been more in friends and family are no hire zones.
All right. Did you have any other questions?
What state are you in?
Pennsylvania.
Okay. No, I don't. You answered mine. Thanks.
Gotcha, Kim. I'm going to go ahead and put you back on hold. Thanks for calling in. And how about you, Alicia? Did you have anything else?
Oh, no, I think I'm good. I'm just going to look up the things that you had given me, continue to do my research, and, well, I guess more of the percentages breaking down and stuff.
All right, let me touch on that really quick. I know I was gonna.
I don't want to take up your whole time.
That's all right. Okay, so there are a lot of carriers out there that charge a lot of different rates, and I know that I charge 20%, and for that 20%, I provide a lot of value, and I've got a waiting list of people that would like to come on with me. That being said, I've had a lot of people cuss me out, telling me that 20% is too much. The people that are leased to me now, I think, would tell you that they're getting a lot of value out of it, and I've got a few that are just absolutely thrilled with the numbers they're seeing with me and everything, and the 20% makes sense because I'm covering a lot of the different expenses and taking a lot of the risk for them. Now, there's a balancing act between how much do you charge and how much do you provide. The insurance is the one biggest expense that is the breaking point for me. In my opinion, this is just opinion, the owner-operator does not have a choice of what coverage they get, what the policy covers, what insurance carrier they go with, what the deductibles are, what limits they have. They have no choice of anything. They don't have a choice to shop it around. There might, like you said, you could be $15,000 or $8,000 a year. They don't have a say in that. They have to do what the carrier provides. Now, that being said, you could get a line of people to come over and, yes, I'd love to lease onto you. You're only doing this for 5%. Nobody offers 5%. But then they find out that your insurance cost is $50,000 per year. Okay, that's a big difference. So because the owner-operator doesn't have much choice or control, and a good scenario to kind of show you why that's a problem, let's say you're bringing on one, and you have your own truck on now. So let's say your truck has a claim. Let's say there's an accident. Something happens, and you have a claim. Your insurance right now is roughly $8,000 and some for the one truck. It'll probably be about the same for your second truck. Now that you've had a claim, your insurance cost just doubled. So when you renew, it goes from $8,000 to $16,000. If you are back charging your owner-operator for their portion of the insurance, how will you justify that to them? How will you explain that they didn't do anything wrong, you're going to start charging them double? That's a huge problem. Now, you're going to have to demonstrate and give receipts and itemize every penny that you withhold from your owner-operators. So you're going to have to give them all this paperwork and have to show all this to them. If they're paying for the insurance, if they get the slightest little scratch on something, they're going to file a claim because they're paying for the insurance. You don't have a choice. You're still going to probably want to absorb some of that risk. For me, I have a $1,000 deductible, but anything under $5,000, I consider paying out of pocket, so I don't have that claim. Okay, because when you have a claim, your insurance rates will go up. So it's a huge risk that you're going to take there. Now, that being said, I think because the owner-operator has no control over the insurance, the carrier should cover it 100%. So that's my opinion. Now, there have been lawsuits about this. There have been carriers that have back-charged owner-operators for their portion of the insurance. The owner-operator said that you can't force me to do that, and it has gone to court. The courts have ruled that the carrier can charge for the insurance. They can back-charge because they are required to have the insurance, and they're required to be on the carrier's policy, and it's an expense that is incurred. So the carrier can back-charge for the insurance, but I find that to be a gray area and a little shady. So I personally, this is a complete opinion of mine, I personally think that the carrier should cover the insurance, which is what I do. I charge 20%. I've got the best insurance company out there, the best coverage you can get. I carry higher limits of cargo and liability insurance. I carry the general liability. All of that is on me. Now, I do require that the owner-operator gets their own bobtail policy, separate from mine. And in the beginning, I did offer a bobtail policy, non-trucking, and I covered the physical damage, and they carried and paid for only that portion. Here's the problem with that. Same issue. If one of those owner-operators gets in an accident, it spikes the rates for everybody in my company. If they all have their own policies, their own individual policies. If they get in an accident or they have a claim, they have any issues, it's completely on them. Doesn't affect anybody else. They still pay for it either way, but it's completely on them. Okay, so in my opinion, that's the best way to do it. They have to be on your liability and cargo insurance. Add them to yours. Figure out a percentage that will cover 100% of that. Startup costs. So drug test, the initial drug test. You don't know if they're going to pass or not. Okay, they have to take it. The initial drug test, I would back charge them. Whatever that cost is, back charge them the initial drug test. Make sure they're aware that the initial drug test is back charged. Now, beyond that, it's random, and they're in your company, and you are required to drug test them. I would not charge them for drug tests beyond the initial, okay? Beyond just the initial one. I'd back charge them for the initial only. Let's see. Other costs that are associated, if they run your license plate, that could be either a percentage or back charge them. You know, that's up to you how you want to work that. Dispatching. You said you don't want to be the dispatcher. What is it going to cost you to hire somebody to come in full-time as an employee to dispatch these trucks? Now, one dispatcher might be able to dispatch 5 trucks, 10 trucks. You need to figure that out for yourself. What would it take to have one dispatcher? How many trucks can they dispatch? That's what that cost is going to have to be spread out over. You won't be able to charge one truck enough to justify the dispatcher. So in the beginning, you're likely going to have to do the dispatching yourself. You mentioned hiring one of these third-party dispatchers. I'd be very careful about that. Very careful. Some of them operate as independent, unlicensed brokers. There are some out there that have the best interest of the carrier involved in mind, but I'm skeptical of all of them. I have had, there's one dispatcher that gives us loads every once in a while, and it was a brokered load we set up, and it was actually a broker that we had worked with before, but they had just found this particular load, and because this broker was somebody we worked with before, they were already on our list. So we send out a list from time to time, email blast from time to different people that we've worked with. They were already on our list, and because of that, they got an email blast from us, just happened to be the week or so that we did a load that was brought through this dispatch service. This dispatch service, not a broker, didn't have direct customers. It was our customer. They just happened to find the load, threatened us with legal action because we were back soliciting his customers. This was a dispatch company, okay? Dispatch companies can be just absolute nightmares to work with. They can charge crazy rates. Some charge a flat rate. Some charge, crazy percentages that you can't justify. I've seen as much as 10%. There are carriers that you can lease to that dispatch for you at 10%. So be very, very careful. Why would an owner-operator come to you and then want to pay a dispatcher? Or could you afford to pay a dispatcher out of your percentage at whatever it is, 5 to 10%? I would say that you probably cannot. It doesn't make sense. So in the beginning, I'd say that you'd probably want to dispatch for them or allow them a way that they can dispatch themselves. So that's something else that you need to consider. And this all needs to go back to the very beginning of our call. I said you need to establish your business model and you put together a business plan before you do this. Now, that brings me to one other thing. Was this in your model and in your plan 5 months ago when you first started?
I never made a business plan. I just learned everything as I go and just been winging it, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. And
because we never we were going to lease or take out a loan for our for the truck through a third party, through a bank, and then a couple different things. But then it ended up we didn't have to do that, and we bought the truck off of a personal loan. So there was never, I know there's a need for a business plan because everything should be in writing.
Right.
But there wasn't a requirement for that somebody needed it for us.
And there never is in this industry. And I will tell you that the majority of people that I talk to in this industry don't have a business plan and they're winging it. And I would say the successful operators are the ones that do. And I would say in this industry, and I read the actual statistics somewhere, but in this industry, any carrier that starts growing without any type of plan it's less than 5% success rate. Okay, so I would really put together a plan, and you're doing some of the research right now. That's the initial part of putting the plan together, is doing the research. So you're asking the questions and you're doing the research. Put the plan together. But there's a lot that you don't know. There's things you don't know yet. Okay, but you have to do the research to figure that out. And
exactly. That's why I'm like.
And you're winging it. You're trying to figure it out as you go. But I think that if you have a plan to reach certain goals by certain time frames, then you would understand, is this the right time? Should you do this now? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm going to bring on trucks, and I'm going to take a percentage, and I'm going to make a ton of money off the trucks. But your perception is that your perception is you're making money off the trucks, but you don't know what service you're providing them yet. I asked you that. That was the first question I asked. Why are you adding trucks? Right? So I think just to go back, and the people on Facebook, I clicked over, and they're telling me that I'm like laying it on heavy with you. I'm really really tearing your plan apart, and I don't mean to do that, but I want you to understand that there's a lot of risk that you're taking by just growing. There's a lot, and just be very careful. Formulate your plan, and I say that at the close of every one of my shows. Earn your success, but you have to strategize a plan to make that happen. And having a plan in place will.
I do a networking. Yeah, no, I do a networking business as well. So like writing down goals and all of that sort of thing. Like I'm familiar with the whole logic in that aspect of it. So, or the aspect of it. So having a business plan is completely something. It's just something that when you put things together, you're supposed to have a plan and outline it and structure and this, that, and the third. But there's so much out there that I don't know to include into it. So like that's why I've been hesitant on actually writing it down, because then I guess it would just be like a rough draft after a rough draft until I actually finalize it.
Right, but having anything written down is better than nothing. So, obviously when you do your business plan, do it in pencil and go buy one of those giant, kindergarten style erasers, because you'll be using it. All right, so there's nothing wrong with changing your plan as you go, but have your goals in place and make sure your plan is always moving toward your goals, and make sure your goals are set high enough that your plan makes sense as you go, and take it step by step. But I think that's really where you need to start, because you are brand new at this. You are just kind of finding your way. There are things you don't know yet. So if you start to do the research to build this plan, you'll learn these as you go. Your plan is going to be malleable, and you can change it as you need to, but at least try to stick to some structure. And I threw out a bunch of questions in the beginning, like, what is your rate per mile? And you don't know that offhand. And you already told me you don't always know all your costs, and you're trying to figure all that stuff out. Those are all things that you should have before you pull the trigger on bringing on a driver, bringing on an owner operator. Know what everything is going to be, know exactly how this is going to work out. And you're going to be blindsided with different stuff, but at least the stuff that is pretty clearly laid out for you, you'll have ahead of time. So I'd say that, I think you are looking for the straightforward answer of do step by step, go, have them fill out an application, do their background check, and do this, and this. And I think I took it way back, to the beginning in, elementary school level of let's start from the planning process. And so I hope I didn't, deter you too much. I know, like I said, I was talking to Jason Pote about this, and
I'm gonna do it.
Well, I was talking to Jason about this, and I told him the same thing, and he was ready to bring on a fleet, and I in the beginning, and I after talking to me, he said, he downsized, and I think I'll just bring on one for now. I scared him away, and he, so just be very, very careful. There's a lot of risk involved, and do it right, especially since you don't have your initial safety audit yet. You are under the spotlight, and be very careful not to screw that up. So that being said, did I get all your questions answered?
Well, one more thing. In your 20%, besides the insurance, what else do you cover?
Okay, so I do all of this stuff that we're talking about, the driver files and the background checks and everything. I do the IFTA for them. I provide, I do all of the compliance. I actually have Elizabeth and I both here, and we.
For the
I backcharge for the.
Sorry, do you pay for the IFTA, or do you just set it up for them?
I set it up for them, and I backcharge them for that. So I do back charge for the IFTA. And the reason I do that is because that keeps them responsible for their own cost. If they understand the taxes involved, that keeps them responsible for that. Let's see, what else? Elizabeth and I are both here. We do all of the contracts. We were literally busy all day today with 15 trucks. I literally have thousands of brokers that we're set up with, and I think we did 10 setup packets today. And each one of those probably takes us at least an hour to go through. We edit a lot of things. We negotiate things with the brokers. So be very careful about that. I talked about all the risks associated with that. So we do all of the setup. We do all of the rate confirmations to contracts. We assist with dispatch. They're all self-dispatch. We assist with that. I do provide them with the load board, DAT load board. I provide them with the total power, which if you were to get that is $250 for yourself. And I provide them with a seat to that. You can add them to your account, which is something you might consider.
I think I have Pro right now, or DAT Pro. And
is that the $100 a month?
Truck Stop.
Okay, yeah. And so you can
and then
add
Truck Stop, I pay $150.
and you can add them to your accounts on both of those. There is a cost to add them, but you can add them to your accounts. That way you can see what, where their truck is posted. You can help post and refresh and things for them. Another thing is I take all the risk. I do factor right now, but it's not a non-recourse thing. And if a broker doesn't pay me, I still pay the truck. They work for me. They don't work for the broker. So I allow them to negotiate things, and we do some credit checks, and I fill out the contracts. If they don't accept the contracts, we can't do it. I give them the option. If it's a credit issue, I give them the option. I will if they don't pass credit, I won't work with them. If I accept them, I will take the hit. So I have a customer right now that filed bankruptcy and wants us to repay almost $15,000. Okay, and I took the risk on that. So I'm not going to back charge the owner operator for that. I approved it, and I took the risk, and I took the hit. So that type of thing is on me as well. I've had claims filed, and the only thing I hold the owner operator responsible for is the $1,000 deductible for insurance. I think it's important that they have some financial claim or financial skin in the game for a claim. So I do that. But again, I may pay out of pocket the first $5,000 because I don't want a claim to hit my insurance. So I have paid out of pocket several $1,000s for little claims like, stupid things that happen. I back charge the owner operator for the first $1,000. That's it. I take the hit on everything else to try to keep the insurance costs down so that, they don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
All right. So
now, as far as percentages, how comes people don't just say, this is the amount of money that I want to make for you using my authority, and then everything else back charge? Why use percentages? Why don't you just say, I want to make $1,000 off your truck? Or
you could do that if you want to.
Whatever it is.
You could do that if you want to. There's nothing to say you can't.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody doing it.
There's a company
Everything's always like percentage.
Well, part of the reason for that is the costs and the revenues can vary so much, and different segments can vary so much. There is a company right now, RST is the company. They charge $300 per week, flat rate. There's another company, I think Mway or something like that, charges something like that, a flat rate per week. They back charge for everything. And you get paid when they get paid. That $15 a day thing, out the window. Now, here's the thing with some of these, like that RST, they essentially lease all their trucks onto Prime. So Prime pays in 2 days. But the thing is, bringing on owner-operators, I don't know why somebody would lease to them when they could get the same deal and save $300 a week, and they get paid in 2 days, and they take all the risk through Prime anyway. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So, there are companies out there that could do that. But when you are running spot market, working with a lot of different brokers and carriers and different business models, the amount of risk that you take is proportional to the amount of money you make in most cases. So that's why the percentage makes sense.
Now, so say like insurance doesn't want you to add any more trucks, but you still want to continue to grow, or they're like, oh, well, you can't add another one until like another year or till you hit your 2-year mark and this and that. Are you able to kind of like start up another trucking business with a new MC number under your same name? Like, can you have two MCs connected to you?
You could, but that would become exponentially more expensive. So, for example, I am finally into a point with 15 trucks where I am getting huge discounts on things, on fuel discounts, on insurance rates are going to be dropping, hopefully, like huge things because I'm reached a volume level, right? If you have two carriers, you split all of that up over two, and you never reach the volume because they're two separate businesses.
Right.
So that becomes an issue. There are issues where if, let's say, one got shut down over a safety violation, and then the other is already in place, there's questions about chameleon carrier situations and things like that. It's possible to do it. There are companies out there. For example, I'm actually looking at doing something like that because I brought on an RGN heavy haul, and it has completely different insurance requirements than the vans and flatbeds that I have. So I may kind of start another division, another completely different MC number, just so I can have different levels of insurance. If I did it under the rest of the fleet, it would be across 15 trucks. It wouldn't be affordable because the other 14 trucks don't bring in a revenue to pay that additional insurance cost. If I separate that one high risk out,
Right.
I might be able to do something like that. So there are options. Other companies might have like a fleet of dump trucks that run under one authority, and then the general freight trucks run under another, things like that. So there is the option to do it that way. You have to remember that you're dividing your costs, you're doubling your exposure. Now you've got two sets of books to keep, and it just gets to be kind of complicated. Better solution to that would be find an insurance company that will let you grow. Don't grow until they will let you, and do what they think is best, because ultimately they are taking a lot of financial risk on your behalf. They don't let you grow for a reason.
Right.
Does that answer all your questions?
I think so. I'll be sure to call back next week if I have more.
Okay, and you can always find us and all of the previous shows, a lot of information on the previous shows at the Trucking with Authority Facebook group. And I'll go ahead and put you back on hold, Alicia, and we'll wrap things up for the night. Thank you very much for the call. Again, you can find us at the Trucking with Authority Facebook group, Trucking with Authority YouTube channel. We're live here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're listening to the recording, call 917-889-9924, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. And this was Alicia's show tonight, so thank you very much for the call. And I didn't mind kind of dedicating this whole show to your topic. It was pretty good stuff. And I know I promised you a checklist of what to do to bring on an owner-operator to grow your fleet, and I will start working on that right away and try to get something in one of the Facebook groups. That being said, everyone, thank you for joining me. Let me make sure we've got everything covered here with questions. Looks like we may have some things I will try to answer offline here. Thank you all for joining me. Remember to dream big, aim high, strategize your plan, earn your success because you don't deserve it. You got to earn it. And remember, only you drive you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.